So Lillian, I think we're going to get started if that works for you. Oh.
Okay, that's fine. I think I'm all set now.
Great, terrific. We'll keep it a little bit informal, but I just want to formally say hello and welcome to those sitting in our auditorium here at General Mills. I'm Ellen Goldberg-Luger, and I'm the Executive Director of the General Mills Foundation. And I'm very pleased to welcome everybody to our exclusive Ashoka webinar series. So this spring, we're bringing you a number of global experts and innovators who are sharing their stories and solutions with General Mills employees. And so through the course of this webinar, you're going to be hearing from leaders in the fields of health, sustainability, economic development, and education. And I think most of you here or joining us through our Champions Network are aware that Ashoka is an international nonprofit, and they work to identify new solutions to pressing social issues. And really, when we sat down with the team from Ashoka, we were inspired and thought that it would be very exciting to bring this to General Mills employees, to expose our employees to new ideas and change makers around the world. So thank you to the Ashoka team for partnering with us. And with that, I want to turn it over to our moderator for today's conversation, and that's Spectra Myers. Spectra's a change manager with Ashoka, and she will moderate the conversation with our change maker, Spectra.
Thank you, Ellen. Really appreciate it. So this is our third of 5 conversations with social entrepreneurs from around the world. Most of, I think, of the folks who've joined have probably heard a little bit about Ashoka, but I'll do a quick introduction before we get into our interview with Lillian, and then we'll end with questions. And so if you are joining via Champions TV, there is an email the moderator or email the host up in the upper right-hand corner that you can click to submit a question at any time, and we'll be sure to bring you in. We'd love to hear from you. So again, my name is Spectra Myers, and I work with Ashoka here in the Twin Cities. And I'm going to serve as the moderator for our conversation today. But I'm just really pleased, again, to be here with support from the General Mills Foundation. We just see so many interconnections between the work that General Mills does around the world and the work that Ashoka does with our fellows. And we focus on changing systems. And we do that through our networks. So locally, nationally, and globally, we build networks to find and support social entrepreneurs. These folks have innovative solutions to pressing social issues, including health, education, agriculture, etc. We call these folks Ashoka Fellows, and they're elected into a lifetime fellowship with support in terms of a living stipend, access to resources and connections, and opportunities to have their work shared with folks like yourselves. So we really appreciate the opportunity to share what our fellows are doing all around the world. The second thing that Ashoka does is we look for patterns across their work. We try to then shift or accelerate those patterns with support from our partners and in partnership with our fellows. And then finally, we partner with businesses, the media, and higher education to try to create a different kind of ecosystem where innovation can emerge. We do that here in the Twin Cities and around the world. So with that being said, I'd love to just introduce you to Lillian. Lillian Masebenze is one of our fellows in South Africa. She founded Gingi, which means industrious woman, social entrepreneurial networks in 2004 and launched the organization in 2006. The organization empowers women and youth with tailor-made skills training, as well as linking their emerging businesses to market and finance, helping them improve their livelihoods and the livelihoods of their communities. For this innovative work, she was awarded an Ashoka Fellowship in 2008, and her organization was a finalist in the coveted Ernst & Young Social Entrepreneur of the Year Award in association with the Schwab Foundation in 2010. Gingi has been recognized by Hillary Clinton, then Secretary of State, during the world's Women's Month in 2009. She's been a speaker at the Global Summit of Black Business Women Leaders in the United Kingdom in 2005, and Women Entrepreneurs in Ethiopia in 2010. And finally, the Women's Economic Empowerment Summit in Sweden in 2012. She's a wonderful entrepreneur, businesswoman, and change maker, and we're so pleased to have her here today. So to do a bit of an intro to her work, so you can see a little bit of her networks in action, we're going to play a short video and then jump in and get to know Lillian.
Mhani Gingi was established in 2006 in Cape Town by Lillian Masebenza. She sees her social entrepreneurial organization becoming a renowned leader in providing innovative solutions and business opportunities aimed at alleviating poverty within the global society. The Mhani Gingi model promotes social entrepreneurship amongst women and youth so that they can improve not only their livelihoods, but also those of their families and communities. In this way, they can move away from being providers of labor and consumers of goods and services to becoming creators of wealth with their own businesses, employ themselves and others, and get to the point where they contribute fully into the greater economy.
We learn about how to market ourselves there, how to boost our business, how to talk to our customers, and how to discipline ourselves.
I've had some exposures, networking. I've attended some international women's meetings. I belong to the Women's Chamber as well through Money Guinea.
It teaches us how to cope, to focus your business, like you mustn't give up.
Partnership with Money Guinea helps us a lot with business networking. We were told lots about how to manage money since we're working from home and we're self-employed.
There's a place there we used to go and sell there and meet a lot of white ladies that they were interested with our things and buy it.
With the black ladies, we must empower ourselves. We cannot sit down and wait for somebody to come and give us something. We must go out and find something and be confident in what we are doing.
Langa Cheshire Home is a residential facility for the physically disabled adults. The relationship we have with Money Guinea is a blessing. They assisted us by giving us the vegetable seedlings, and that has made a huge impact for fundraising as well.
Umsebenzi wasegadini beningawazi, ndiwufundele apha, ndifunde elikhulu apha. Ndaya nasepalamente, zange ndangena epalamente, ndithe ngoba lapha ndazazi indawo.
Ngoku ndiyakwazi into ubana ngaba abantwana bam ndibathengele into abazifunayo ngexesha elililo, bayakwazi ubana ngaba benezinto zasesikolweni. Kulo nyaka ndifumene indlu kwaLanga eStenini, ndisuka eTyotyombeni, ndihlala kulo, line-room ezi-2, libe ne-toilet phakathi, libe ne-dining room nekitchen. Emveni koko sifakelwa igiza kwenzela uba sizosebenzisa amanzi ashushu.
Empowering individuals to make informed business decisions and maximize their collective power in wealth creation.
It's a great video, Lillian, and it shows so much going on. So for all of us here, can you explain what Mhani Guinea is? Because we saw a lot in there. We saw lettuce, we saw housing, we saw sewing. So what connects all of this? And I know you have a diagram to kind of walk us through how your organization works.
Thank you very much. And I just want to say I appreciate the opportunity through Ashoka and to meet with General Mills. I'm very excited on behalf of Money Guinea. What I'll do is to take you through I believe you do have the printout of the organizational chart. What it is that the Money Guinea, right at the center, that's where the engine is, the office, what we're doing. And then if you look, we're being supported by governance, which is very, very important. The people who see to it how we're doing all of this. The legal, the financial, the trustees. And then on the other side, then you'll see the mentorship kind of program that we're working with, and also the people who are retired who can bring in their skills in that sense, and then the volunteer bank of locally and internationally. Below that, that's where now it starts all what you were seeing on the video. If you look at the designers who were talking about what they're doing and all that, that represent the network initiatives. So in other words, we take the known and help them to take it further, improve what they are doing so that the market can be interested in what they are doing. The second part, the social responsibility, that's where we're saying, if you look at the network initiatives, is to try and work with the problem, the symptoms of the problem, lack of skills and education and all that. But we get to the bottom of it and say, can we start working with kids at early learning centers to enhance the formal education that is happening? Can we work with the old people? Can we work with the youth? And there are programs there that are happening. And then the third one is a flagship, where it's the nutrition, where we have the nursery, and that nursery we propagate organically the vegetable seedlings, which we work with the communities. We identify open spaces and start those gardens so that the nutrition can happen. And how do we do this? The training, which is theoretical, but then they implement in each of those areas that I've talked about. And then it's either the technical or the business skills that is being implemented, and then the evaluation, while we divide them into tiers. So the tier one is mostly those who don't have education and the skills and all that, but they have the potential. Tier two is mostly the ones that you have seen now. This is where they've got, this is what they are doing. And tier three, it's really when they enter the business area. So that's how the whole Money Guinea structure is working. When we say empowerment, when we say social entrepreneurship, what legacy are we leaving in those communities? It's not about the entrepreneur enriching themselves through the plight of the community, but what do we leave them with in educating them to be able to do? So in a nutshell, to support what they have said on the video and the structure and what is it that Money Guinea is all about, that's what we look at.
So Lillian, at the heart of what you do is you work with groups of community members who have already formed around a shared finance model, right? So they have a sharing circle, a lending circle, to use simple language. And that group then becomes sort of an engine to help the group develop their own entrepreneurial endeavors with support and training from your organization, right?
Yes.
And we'll go into all the examples, but maybe let's give some context for everybody. Could you all of our Ashoka Fellows, they use their personal experience, they see an issue in their community, and they know that they can solve it. So let's go back in time a little bit and tell people a little bit about who you are and what you were seeing in the community that you wanted to address. Give the folks some context.
Okay. Who is Lillian? Lillian is a rural community girl, started in a rural area, used to look after my father's cattle, but that also gave me a sort of a training to be able, how do you take responsibilities, how do you take risks and all of that. For me to come to all of this was to look at my own background. So it's not where you read about something, you write a thesis, it's a life that I have led that has driven me to be able to go back there and say, how do I, now that I have the educational background, the networks that I've met as I've been doing what I'm doing, the experience that I got throughout working in the bank and all that, how do I put all of that together and plow back and addressing this widening gap? Because the rich are becoming richer, poorer. What can be done to narrow that gap? That for me was very, very important. And when you look, it's always the women and the young people who are in that level. So how can we help them? So that there's not enough places to employ people, but there are things that people can do, moving from the known to the unknown. If you can do something with what you have to attract what you need to have, that's great. I mean, when we started, boy, I didn't know that one day I could be sitting here and talking to General Mills in Minnesota, but if I didn't do anything I'll still be sitting and saying we have poverty. So that's what I'm trying to instill in the communities, through the women, through the young people, to say you can do it. You just have to put your mind to it. If you look at that book by Paul Hanna, which says you can do it, and for me that was a motivation to say it can be done.
Right. Now you started off your career as a businesswoman, working in marketing and community development. Can you talk a little bit about how your work background then gave you skills that you wanted to share?
I started working first just in a setting where I was working as an office person, going to work and doing all of that. And that gave me the experience and also enhanced my training of marketing and communication and finance that I studied at university level. And from there, I was able to start doing things on the side. Even though I was working full time, I will volunteer out there. I will get women together to do things. They did things where we won some prizes while I was still working, applying that knowledge. So when I finally stepped out in 2004, it was fully fledged to say, how can I put this to work? And the model is such in that it's got the social part, but it's not a handout part. It's a part where we're looking at promoting social cohesion. So when we say creating wealth, it's not only about income generation, it's about social cohesion because it's important in the community for the people to work together. So it's human capital that we're promoting and also the financial capital. And that's how I put all this together, plow back into the community, working with women, young people, and also those living with disabilities.
Great. So for folks who aren't familiar with South Africa and your work in that context, what can you tell them to help them understand why this was really important? What was happening in communities that led you to say we need to use this approach?
Yes, it's very important. Maybe people don't know, but you know that for years, over 40 years, we've been living under apartheid, where, for instance, even when I did my master's, I couldn't go and do it at a certain university, not because my academic marks were down, but because I was Black. So it was the apartheid system where we were living in the separate development, they used to call it. And for that, most of the people were not having an opportunity to open bank accounts. They didn't have an opportunity to have a track record. They didn't have an opportunity to go to schools as they would have loved to do. So that gap that I talked about was just exacerbated by all these things that have been happening in the country. But for me, again, being a social entrepreneur, I asked myself, if we don't do something about it, it will just continue perpetuating all of this. How can we now that in 1994 Mandela was released and people are beginning to be able to share in the bigger space? Sorry, what is it that we can do? And hence coming up with this, hence looking at what are other like-mindeds out there, what are other organizations that can come up and help in this. Doesn't help to say a person is not bankable, it's a label. Doesn't help to say a person is in the bottom of the pyramid. What do you do to get them out of that bottom of the pyramid to lead a better life?
Right, so because of, I'm just making sure that I understand, because of apartheid, Black South Africans were excluded from economic development opportunities as well as finance opportunities. But at the same time, you realized that there were sort of these lending circle groups that you could, all over the country, right, where that's how Black South Africans were able to provide small loans to each other for things. So you were able to tap into that network to kind of get Mhani Guinea started. There's an existing structure. Can you talk a little bit about, with all of those lending circles, what you do? Maybe give an example of one of the projects.
That was a big driving force for me, and also because I worked with Professor Sheridan when I was still working for All Mutual, where he's got this thing at Washington University called helping the poor amass assets. And for me, that was a very good model that was talking to our situation as well. We have what we call stock fells. Stock fells are groups that have helped us throughout the years, where people come together and say, what can we do to help? Maybe it's going to plow Lillian's field today, and then that whole community will come together, come and plow my field. It, because of the power of the collective, it goes faster and it's more effective than if I was doing it on my own. That way, we also have them doing, putting together money and say, I want to take my child to school, I need $1,000. And then we put together, so the 5 of us will put together, and then we give it to Lisa this month, next time we give it to Spectra, and then that's sort of merry-go-round, but helping each other. And this model has worked very well, but there has to be trust amongst the people who are doing it. There has to be a commitment so that if I have got it now, I don't go away, I must also give next time. So for me was to say, how do we take that indigenous knowledge and we also link it to business? Because then you can still do that, help each other, but you put something aside to start those businesses. And this is how we started the Money Guinea network businesses, where the sewing group will come together and say, what do we need? We need material, we need machines, and how much is that? So they put together, go and buy. We need skills. Oh, this one has got skills. I'm giving an actual example. That's how the sewing group started. So is that model, which has worked in the community, is still working now to say, how do we innovatively use that to be able to answer to the social problem that we're having. So I use the model of the Stockfell, but it didn't end there. I show them that when you have made some money, you can actually invest. And with a group, we put together 100,000 rands, and we bought shares. So we're still having some of those shares. They've done very well, the MTN shares, we were lucky. But also to show them it's not about just consuming. You have also to sustain yourself. How do you sustain what you're doing? You receive, but you put something so that what you do goes on. So that was a very good thing. And then the groups have now also started their own other little groups, coming together, putting money, having interest, giving each other some loans so that they go on. Because the other thing is that they get exploited by the microfinance, some of them, because they charge them very high interest because they can't go anywhere else. So it was also educational to say you can start doing something for yourselves rather than waiting to go to the bank or waiting for a microfinancer who will charge you more. So you do that as your own little business as well.
Right, so while these groups, when it started, the groups primarily were making loans to each other to make purchases or to kind of give finance when it was needed. And you were able to then help shift those groups to not only do that, but also think about investing in their own businesses.
Yes.
So that was a big shift. So, of course, finance was one part of it, but there was also a need for sort of training, business training. So can you give us an example of one of the groups, maybe one of the projects that you've worked on?